Hi, this is my continuation of the solo campaign that I'm running using the From the Ashes role-playing game. I'm running this solo campaign using Abraham's method. If you do not know what Abraham's method is, I recommend that you check out the link in the description below. It's a method that I developed to run modules, role-playing game modules and campaigns as a game master with emulated player characters. I'm also using the Black Streams Solo Heroes system. I added a small tweak, more similar to Scarlet Heroes. Scarlet Heroes uses a more polished version of this system, but basically when the damage goes above 6, you gain an additional hit die of damage. You deal 1 additional hit die of damage to the enemy. Now let's get started. You may remember from last time that Corvus explored the current cavern grounds completely, and he's now going up the steps to see what lies ahead. If you haven't seen my other session reports, the complete playlist is in the description below. I recommend that you check it out, otherwise this report is not going to make too much sense when it comes to the story. So Corvus gets to the area where he destroyed the gelatinous cube, and the whistling sound he had heard before is getting louder. He goes up the steps, and the environment changes from rough rock to smooth chiseled stone. Corvus arrives at a main hall, and he puts down his lantern as usual and stands agape at the horrifying rotten tapestries that cover the walls. They depict bloody battles and executions. Corvus misses his saving throw and gains 1 point of stress. Now Corvus feels really paranoid. He's constantly looking over his shoulder. It's not as disadvantageous as when he accumulates further stress points, but it's still quite unnerving for him. He starts to explore the room and notices double doors on the west. He opens them and they lead to a caved-in section of the cavern. There are also double doors on the east side, and they are locked. However, the lock holding those double doors closed has some symbols that are very similar to the short sword that he found at the ghoul's coffin. So he inserts the sword, using it as a sort of key, causing the doors to open, and the sword stays in the lock. It seems impossible to pull it out. He goes beyond the double doors and he sees a corridor. It continues east, and it is flanked by 4 doors, 2 on the north and 2 on the south wall. I made a roll to see how Corvus would proceed, and I got Mesmerize, Arcane, Relative. This made no sense when it comes to his current situation, so I decided to make a simple D5 roll to see which door he is going to enter, or if he's going to the corridor, and this resulted in him entering to the door on his left. So this is a wrecked library. When he opened the door, he saw all of these books, scrolls, and pages scattered across the floor. I made a roll to see how Corvus would proceed in exploring this room, and I got Find Scientific Tension. So despite this tense journey, Corvus decides to search the library to see if he can find something of scientific value. Despite the horrifying lore and images in the documents, Corvus continues reading unfazed. That is, he's made his saving throw. He didn't receive any more stress points, and he manages to find 2 scrolls of magical value. And now that Corvus knows more or less what is behind each of these doors, that is, it seems to be an arrangement of rooms, I made another roll to see how he was going to keep on proceeding, keep on moving forward, and I got Communicate, Ghostly Companion. I interpreted this roll as if Corvus remembers the ghost's warning that there is death ahead, so he thinks that perhaps the ghost meant that there was much danger further into the cave, not only past the area where the ghost was. So based on that communication, Corvus decides to explore all of the doors first before going further into the cave, thinking that there is death or great peril down the corridor. Next, Corvus decides to go to the farthest door on the right, as determined by another roll of D4 in this case, and this door is locked. And I proceeded to make another roll, and I got Trespass, Immaculate Chaos. So based on this combination of words, Corvus attempts to force the door open without damaging it too much, in case he needs to jam it closed for whatever reason, and with the assistance of his crowbar he manages to do it quite easily. Behind the door lies a decadent room. It seems to have been the chambers of a lady once. There is a wardrobe, a small table, and a 4-poster bed. On the bed there is a corpse, the desiccated remains of a woman, dressed in a rotted and frayed nightgown. Perhaps she was a prisoner held for ransom at one time. I made another roll to see how Corvus would proceed with the room, and I got ambush psychological food. Corvus is not confident enough to step into the room. The corpse could be a powerful undead creature setting up an ambush, the apparently quiet room serving as a mind game to trick the unwary. That's the psychological part of the combination of words. So maybe this is a trick to lure someone in to serve as food for the corpse inside. So Corvus decides to close the door, and this actually works against him because there was actually a magical ring under the bed. The room was harmless, but you know how sometimes players think that rooms are a death trap pretty much, and they do not go in. So Corvus, like I said, closes the door and hopes that the corpse within was in deep torpor and didn't notice Corvus's presence. So I made another die roll and determined that Corvus was going to open the door next to this one. So Corvus opens the door, and the room behind seems to have been a study of sorts, with books, scrolls, and furniture, everything wrecked and ruined and scattered all over the floor. There is a desk against the far wall, stained with blood and ink, and upon the desk lies an open book. I made a roll to see how Corvus would react to this book, and I got a confront aggressive underling. Corvus would aggressively step inside the room confidently, ready to face any truth, confront anything within the book or any trap or enemy, and he was still quite wary of any undead beings that could serve as underlings for the one running this place. Corvus reads the pages of the book and learns the following verse. 5 are the carrion birds pecking at his head. 2 are the hanged men dancing till they are dead. 7 are the victims dead from the plague. 3 are the men digging the graves. So this is a very mysterious verse. Maybe it's nothing important, but nonetheless Corvus will keep it in mind. So after reading this, Corvus approaches the remaining door. After exiting the study, the iron door to this room has scratch marks, and it seems someone has attempted to use tools to open it. I forgot to mention that in that same book where the verse was found, he also found a note describing a skull that would answer 3 questions, and the writer of this information speaks of how he is so afraid of asking the skull questions. He does not want to use up his questions. He seems to be at the edge of madness when he wrote this. So Corvus proceeds to this iron door that is locked. It seems to have some sort of strange combination lock. I made a roll to see if Corvus could figure out the answer to this puzzle, and I got discover pandering mystery. So Corvus figures out the mystery behind the verse that he saw in the study. The numbers in each of the lines are the combination for the lock. He opens the room, and he immediately becomes aware that the room contains a single tall table, and there is a glass skull on top of it. This must be the glass skull as mentioned in the book, and the skull is actually the source of the whistling sound. This was producing that whistling echo all over the place. The air seems to be flowing through the skull in a very strange way. I made a roll to see what Corvus would do with this skull, and I got observe tragic food. Rather than ask questions or take the skull, Corvus just observes the skull for a while and decides to leave it there, because tragedy seems to have struck anyone involved with the skull. Those that meddled in the skull's affairs, or that tried to use the skull or consider using the skull, they surely served as food for the undead. This was another thing that worked against Corvus, because the skull was actually quite valuable. He could sell it if he didn't want to ask any questions. So Corvus leaves this room and moves further ahead into the corridor. I made a roll to see how Corvus would proceed, and I got Inflict Complex Beast. So seeking to inflict harm on any beast ahead with his most complex weapon, which would be the longbow, and the rare looking arrows he found previously, Corvus keeps moving forward, and he arrives at a large cavern that houses 5 corpses, standing up, moving about aimlessly, all dressed in either guard or maid attire. They are quite disgusting. Corvus has to make a saving throw to avoid taking stress damage from them. They are wielding rusty blades or spears, kitchen knives and soldier spears. They seem to be falling apart almost, but they are still quite dangerous. Corvus made his initiative roll, he got the initiative, and he simply outdoes himself. He takes his bow and his arrows, lets his arrows fly, while picking up other arrows on the floor left by some other careless explorer probably, and Corvus pretty much annihilates all of the shambling corpses in a single round with lightning fast moves. This is thanks to the solo heroes system, or a way to tweak a D20 based system, because damage is distributed, and using the fray die mechanic adapted to shooting arrows, using the solo heroes version for stars without number, sometimes arrows become a bit abstract arrows or any sort of projectile that you are using. So I imagine it as if Corvus found some additional arrows on the ground and he started shooting at the zombies, so he pretty much destroyed them all. Corvus keeps going and encounters stone steps on the northwest, and in the northern section he finds a wretched lab filled with bloody and rusted surgical tools, 2 tables with straps and chains, and a book on anatomy, and many jars containing disgusting fluids and body parts are here. Corvus, if he could vomit, he would probably do so, but he's also undead. But the entire scene looks very disgusting, very raw, and besides that, there is nothing of interest here. I made a roll to see what Corvus would do, because he now found these stone steps that lead upwards. He makes a roll and he got Discuss Erratic Peace. So because Corvus is about to explore a new area, and because he has accumulated many souls, he wants to return to town first and see if he can find someone offering some interesting discussion about the path ahead, someone who is more experienced perhaps, so that his approach is not as erratic, and this could offer him peace of mind, and he could also be more at ease if he could level up. It depends on how much he's going to get for the objects that he has found. And that concludes this session of my solo campaign. I hope you have been enjoying it. I've been having a lot of fun using Abraham's method. I highly recommend that you check out my method and you use it to run all of those modules and campaigns that your players simply do not want to play. Or if you do not have a group of players, you can enjoy those modules and adventures without having them just sit at the shelf without being used, or at your computer files. That way you can use them, you can run them as a game master, and if you get to play them with real player characters, you already have that experience or that practice with the emulation provided by Abraham's method. Once again, thank you for watching this session report. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. And thank you so much to those that have been supporting the channel by sending Right Through RPG gift certificates. If anyone else wants to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. Once again, thank you, and see you later.